Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Digital Artcast. Today I was lucky enough to be joined by Borkur Eiriksson. We talked about his career in CCP, how he got into the industry, how he taught himself through moving to a new school, and of course what he's doing now with his life and the power of personal projects. A small apology for the audio just now. When we talked, there was a small connection lag, and because this is the only time I got to speak to him, we had to use the audio we had at the moment. So just a couple of technical hitches. The audio might cut out just slightly when he's talking, but the rest of the interview is solid gold. Thanks again to Borkur for giving up his time, and of course here is the interview. So let's go. Okay. So guys, welcome back to Digital Artcast. Colin is not with me today, but I have replaced him with someone mightier and more powerful in the art world, Borkur Eiriksson, who has joined us all the way from Iceland to chat to us on Digital Artcast. So thank you very much for joining us.
No worries. Hi, how's it going?
Again, within the confines of concept art, me and you met just briefly back at industry workshops in London back in August, where you gave a talk, quite an interesting talk actually that I've mentioned before on the Artcast, about being an artist and finding that inner way to work within your personal stuff. But if people don't know you before the industry workshops or before your kind of past experiences, how did you get in the industry? Where did you start, and why kind of concept art?
I think when I was like 16, 17, I sort of realized I could draw a little bit, or at least I always envied people that could draw when I was a kid. I had some, best mates that could draw, and I thought it was like a magical ability. But I was never really, any good at it. I was okay, but I was never like the best guy in class. You know that guy.
Yeah, the guy that's always drawing in his sketchbook and has the awesome stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
The Warhammer 40k stuff.
How does it do that? It's amazing. Yeah. And when I was around 16, 17, I was studying, I think, physics or something.
Interesting.
And I was just like changing courses a lot and just wasn't finding myself.
Couldn't find your niche, yeah.
No, and I have a small case of like ADD, and if I'm not interested in what I'm doing, I don't do it at all.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm a passive aggressive asshole. It's just because I can't.
But again, that's interesting. Even just to say quickly that I've found that a lot of creative types around me suffer from something like attention or sleeplessness or lack of concentration, and it tends to be it's a real trait with creatives, which is crazy.
I actually have a theory about creatives. That I was having this discussion with a friend of mine the other day, cool. And I've been talking to other creatives about this, right. And they all relate to it. Yeah. And I think a lot of creative people have a little bit under the normal serotonin level in their body.
Yes.
So they're always looking for that high, that high to either raise the serotonin or dopamine.
Yep.
And a lot of people do that through creative processes.
Yep.
Because both the creation part and also then the satisfaction of releasing it sort of gives you a bit of that high. Mm-hmm. And then of course the cycle continues. Yeah. And so I think there's something there.
Yeah.
and also a lot of creative people are very unstable, so it hangs a bit together.
I think because also your creative life is unstable in itself. You're never really tied down to, unless you're lucky to be in one place at one time, but a lot of guys move around or switch jobs quite often, so...
Yeah, and it's funny because, all people want like security and all that, and but I don't know, there's something there that's just like keeps us on the go.
The high, yeah. So high school, so you were studying these random subjects, moving about.
Yeah. I was going to be a scientist or something.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, some childhood dream that.
Not fancy yourself as one of the Icelandic strongmen, no.
No, I'm a very short guy, so
Yeah,
yeah, that wouldn't really like work out.
yeah.
But no, and then I took some drawing courses, and I sort of figured I could draw, so that very subtly sort of came my passion, and I
And,
started drawing a lot.
and what age were you at this point?
It's like 16, 17 or something.
Yeah.
I,
Again, maybe even a wee bit later than most people, because some guys say, "Oh, I've been drawing since I was 3 or 4 or 5." Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, of course, I've been drawing
Mm.
like my whole life, but it was never like that. I
Pursuing
think
it,
we had
yeah.
to. I think we had to like draw. I think I had to. We were supposed to draw our hand or something as
Right.
a reference,
Yep, yep.
and I just like something in my brain just clicked, and I could just do it.
Yeah.
And then I sort of realized, oh, okay, you just copy what's in front of you. Okay, yeah, now I get it. You know, some weird realization that's just something just worked out. And from there on, I stopped. I quit high school and I went into, or I changed high schools. I went into industrial design,
Right. Yep.
and I really enjoyed that. And that's when I started to get like very high marks, and everything was going well. And then after that, I was thinking about maybe going to some art academy, and I didn't want to go to the one here, so I was looking at some schools abroad. And a friend of mine, he had just finished one in the Netherlands.
Right.
So I just decided to do that. I went to Rotterdam, and I was in Willem de Koning Academy
Nice.
there for it's just over 4 years.
And was that a more traditional brick and mortar art school kind of setup?
Well, it's not really. I wouldn't call it a traditional art school. It's very RT, but and they focus a lot on the ideas more so than technique.
Right.
They don't really teach much technique, but they give you a lot of room to explore your own.
Right.
It's a bit like a laboratory,
Oh, interesting.
which is very, very cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a fine school. But when you compare people who have been working in, for example, who were studying in New York or something,
Right.
they were like leagues above. There was just a different caliber of like techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah, technique.
Yeah. Well, they do say
So-
obviously that part of the world you live in and off towards Scandinavia are kind of places where education is at an all-time high. You know, what I mean, they seem to have a way of teaching across here that is just so appealing to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff I learned there. For example, just self-learning,
Right.
and I mean, for example, the students that come out of that school, no one has the same style.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
you're not force-fed any techniques or anything.
It's interesting. Yeah.
So you get a lot of variety of just everything, and I actually started in animation.
Right. Yeah.
I was doing like stop motion and just 3D animation and just
wow.
drawing cell animation as well.
Yeah.
But
wow.
I just found it really boring. So I took this illustration course that a lot of my friends were in, and that really worked out. And so I just okay, this is probably my thing. So I started doing that.
Interesting. Well, I mean, again, it sounds like you found your identity, and I think, when it comes to artists, style is your identity, really. It's the thing that defines you when you paint or draw. And even just quickly, I mean, do you know the kind of epiphany you had of when you found your style, or there was a style that influenced you? Obviously, you'll probably talk about the guys you studied, at university. But was there any particular time you were looking at painting-wise or drawing-wise that you liked?
Yeah, I think at some point when I was studying, I can't remember exactly when. It was probably 2000, 2001 or something.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I remember. I started looking at the Siegen forums
Right.
back in the days.
Yep.
And of course, we're more Collins, Wassup and HBX and all these guys were.
Yep.
And I sort of was looking at them and I was like, really? You can do that with Photoshop?
Yeah.
I know Photoshop. I can't do that. I mean, how do you do it? And then, of course, I mean, I discovered, oh, okay, you need a Wacom tablet. And
Yeah.
so I bought a tiny Wacom tablet, like an A6,
Yeah.
on the really small ones.
Kind of bamboo ones.
I started, yeah. And I started using that to do like color studies before I rendered them out in acrylics.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Or gouache. And that's sort of like, I was just using it as a sketching tool for bigger paintings or bigger illustrations.
So you're using that to build on experience to then take that to like an actual canvas?
Yeah, basically just doing studies, just like color studies and seeing how it works.
Yeah.
And then, but then I really like quickly realized that I could just like finish the whole piece there. You know,
Yeah.
just like I ended up just finishing the paintings there and just printed them out and gave them in the assignment.
Oh, yeah, wow.
And all the teachers were, you know, very how should we say, they were reactive, or you know, they really liked. They didn't mind getting it, you know, in a digital format or
Yeah.
or on a canvas.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I was the first guy that was handing in digital artwork there. And that was like, and I actually got one of the teachers who was sort of a legend in the illustration industry. He started doing digital painting after that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, definitely when it comes to stuff like Photoshop, I mean, it is, people think even it's a modern tool that has only come across, but you know, Mullins back in ILM, you know, was working with John, you know, when he invented Photoshop before they sold it off to Adobe, you know, he was painting with a mouse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah, I remember my first two photos, and but you know, as soon as I got the tablet, it like instantly came better.
Yeah. And now even like these days, obviously fast forwarding here before we go back, but are you 50-50 with drawing on paper versus digital, or do you really sketch really, or do you do everything digital, or?
Mostly do more figure drawing.
Right.
On paper.
Right. Cool.
But yeah, I don't really use the paper anymore. I do oils as well.
Right. Oh, interesting.
Which I really like. And which is actually kind of funny because it changed my whole workflow in Photoshop when I started doing oils.
Yeah, because you're dealing with a kind of tangible element outside of a brush in Photoshop, so it changes your way of thinking, laying down the paint.
Yeah, both laying down the paint and also just like what I'm trying to achieve, because there's a lot of in the pigment that you sort of discover it's really hard to replicate in Photoshop.
Yeah.
So you start trying to replicate it almost.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
I mean, I've even found just kind of off topic, but there is a program somebody recommended to me. I think it's called Artcast, and it actually uses well, it's supposed to mimic real life acrylics and oils and gouaches. You know, the movement and flow and mixing. It's like, you know, as opposed to be actual paint, as opposed to the Photoshop stuff, which is just a color moved across with a brush.
Yeah, exactly. I've tried Artcast, and it's fine. Just I always get the feeling when I use it that I could just as well just do it in oils.
Yeah.
Or, you know, because there's like it's trying to mimic something that's already better.
Yeah.
At it, you know. So I don't really. You know,
it
and
as
you
much.
lose all the power of Photoshop because Photoshop is just like an image manipulation tool of death.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Whereas Artcast is not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like even the one thing I've seen that's quite interesting is when I watched a Gumroad for Paul Canavan, and he was laying like a brown underpainting under the photo in it before he took it to Photoshop to paint over, which was maybe one good thing to use, because I've never even seen, you know, because I don't come from too traditional a background. I'm doing design, so an underpainting is something I didn't have a concept of, but then obviously looking at him using that, I was like, oh, that's interesting. That sets your whole tone for your painting.
Yeah, exactly. That's really clever, and I think it's actually. I mean, I've seen a lot of people use Artcast that way to start out, and because then you have sort of a certain feel underneath.
Yep.
You know, which isn't too labeled by Photoshop.
Yeah, because even you get a lot of texture in the brushes as well, so it does bring out a lot of the painting in it. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So you finished, you took your style, you qualified. What was the next step after that? Did you have a plan coming out of school?
No, when I graduated, I had been looking at. Oh well, yeah, sort of. I had my eye on an Icelandic company called CCP, which has been developing EVE Online, and I knew like the founder a little bit. I sat down in a coffee with him at one point.
Interesting.
And he he sort of vaguely promised me a job when I was finished. And then when I graduated, I just went there and just like, hey, I'm here for my job.
Oh yeah, nice. How
And
did that?
sorry?
No, I was just going to say. So how did that meeting come about? Was that a networking event, or was that just by chance, or?
Yeah, I just emailed him and I just said like, hey, I'm out of school, so
Oh yeah, interesting. Wow, yeah.
and I had been following up a little bit, maybe once a year, saying,
Yeah,
hi,
yeah, yeah. Which is a great networking tool. Just to even, people say it's crazy just to even email these people with no kind of clear set, but I've found it invaluable. Just even emailing somebody, look, hey, I want to get in your radar. I'm looking for maybe a job when I graduate. I mean, in local here, there is
Uh,
access.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
no,
I mean, first when I contacted him,
yeah,
I definitely, I wasn't really that good. I mean, I was okay,
yeah.
but he see improvement from me, and that sort of helped his decision a lot as well.
Yeah, which is great. Again, like you say, just starting a conversation with these people. I mean, I know the Access here in Glasgow. Before I started my 3D course a year back, I just emailed them saying, "Look, I'm starting this course. I might, eventually be looking for a job in the industry. Do you guys hire from this university?" And they were like, "Yeah, we've worked on them a while." And I actually just, off initial workshops, meeting them again after that initial email. They already knew who I was. I got a wee
Mhm.
studio tour back there in December to go see what they were working on, and yeah, it's good to. I'm definitely on the radar now, so it's awesome. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then obviously in the door, were you straight as straight as a concept artist? Because even back then, because I mean, concept art itself has only really evolved over the last maybe 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
As a title for a job, because obviously we've heard the rumours, the guys back in the day working in the 90s companies where the guy who could draw best done the art, you know what I mean? So, um, did they take you in as a painter, as an illustrator, or?
Sorry, you're breaking. Sorry, you're
Oh,
breaking up a
sorry.
little bit. I'm hearing.
Um, no, I was just going to say, did they take you in as an illustrator or a concept straight away? Was that a title you were given, or?
Yeah, I came in as a illustrator.
Right, yeah. And was that working on backgrounds or characters, or?
That was mostly when I started out. I was originally hired to do like illustrations to the stories that
Right,
were written for Eve,
right, yeah,
and but it was such a that everybody was doing everything.
yeah, yep.
So I ended up doing concepts for ships, and I did a lot of ship modeling as well, and 3D, and just
Wow.
everything art related.
And then how did you find, this is obviously a great point sometimes as well, of how did you find transitioning into 3D, coming from a 2D palette?
Fine, because I had already started 3D a long time ago. I think I started 3D around the same time that I started drawing. I was using Max a lot, and
Right,
just yeah, and like I said, I studied animation, so we used a lot of 3D there.
awesome, great.
So it wasn't that big a deal.
And were you just laying the foundation for the shapes in 3D and then painting over them?
Yeah, both. I think.
Hmm.
I mean, back then it was Ausger. He was the concept artist on Eve, and he designed all the ships.
All right, wow, yeah,
And I ended up doing a lot of the models
yeah,
but I did some concepts as well, maybe for structures and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah. So what was the first title that you shipped? Was it just Eve in its initial form when it first kind of went online?
I started. I actually started after release. I think I started in 2004,
Right,
and that was 1 year after release of
right,
Eve.
yep. And you were just, which is interesting to me because again with it having such a long lifespan now, what were your kind of day to days moving forward past release? Were you just working on stuff that was going to be released as additional stuff down the line, concepting, or?
Yeah, mostly.
Right,
Mostly ships, and I think the first few years went a lot just into ship modeling, and I also remember we did some trailers, and I did a lot of the backgrounds and just images in those.
wow,
Um, I worked a lot with the cinema team as well,
great,
just helping them out, just art direction wise.
yeah,
Um, yeah, because I can't remember when. I think it was 2006 or something. Um, I was sort of offered an art director role in both in Shanghai and also in Atlanta.
Wow.
But I just didn't want to be an art director
Yeah.
because I wanted to be on the floor. So I was sort of I became a lead artist.
Right. Yep.
And
Which is an interesting point for your career, because I think a lot of people have to make that decision. Do I want to manage people, or do I want to keep making art? It's difficult because obviously, I mean, like a lot of us in the industry will not be chasing a paycheck. A lot of us do it for the love, but you must admit, when you look at like these offers from other places that have these great, kind of pay salaries and exotic cities, you must kind of, there's a small voice in your mind that's like, well, that maybe might be a good thing.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really. I think a good art director is a lead artist as
Yeah.
well. I mean, it's practically the same thing. I often feel that the art director is the guy who has to write the emails,
Yeah.
and the lead artist, he's the guy who can actually like just sit with people and just like guide them.
Yeah.
And which is of course totally wrong, but
Yeah.
it's a bit my sort of my experience from
You're
it.
kind of turning it away. I mean, like, it's such a kind of controversial thing when people are like, do I want to earn a bit more money and have a bit more responsibility, or do I want to keep pushing my creative button and making the thing I wanted to make back in the day, which was art. And I think it's finding a fine balance between, because obviously different studios have different variations of what an art director does. I think the bigger the company, the more admin you do, you're right. But then, it's even these elite artists, you'll still be putting on a lot of hats.
Yeah, I don't know. But the whole reason I went into this is to draw and paint.
Yep.
And so, I mean, a bigger paycheck or something or a title just doesn't really tickle me at all. I mean,
Yeah.
I get my paycheck is fine. I'm totally happy with that. And if I need some money, I can do some extra freelance.
Definitely.
And I'm
Yeah.
fine with that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't need much.
Yeah. Did you even see, apart from the financial gain, did you even see maybe even it could have been a good challenge to push you artistically, or did you find that you weren't really, you didn't think it would do that for you, or?
Um, well, it would have meant, of course, more responsibility, which
Yeah.
would be totally fine. But I don't know, I was just probably not ready for it. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe today, if I was offered the same chance today, I would probably
You
take
might
it.
go, yeah.
Yeah, just as a like 2-3 year experiment to
But
see what would
then,
happen.
when you got offered it back then, how old were you?
Yeah, I was 2006. I had only been working for like 2-3 years.
Uh,
I think I was, yeah. How old was I? How old am I now? I think I was 27 then.
yeah, so but again, that's still very young, for guys to be getting offered, like you said, Shanghai, Atlanta, coming from a like me in Scotland, a small island culture, where you've not been in some of the bigger states and worked there in different studios, so you're kind of thinking, would it be for me? Would I enjoy it? Would I like being
Hmm.
away from home?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so. But again, I mean, different people. Some people would obviously see it as a great opportunity, but I think there's some guys who are just always looking like that, and that's the guys that will never settle, who will always be
Yeah,
chasing different jobs.
yeah, oh, yeah. And I remember also at that time, I just had my first girl that back then,
Ah, I
and
see. Yeah,
I was
yeah,
still living with my wife, and
right.
we were, so I
Yeah,
mean, just jumping out to Shanghai was a bit of a like a whoa,
to
hello.
upheave everything. So yeah, it would have been a lot. Yeah, yeah. So moving forward, then you worked, and probably you're unique in where you are. Where um, interesting, because I've also got a friend who works in Rockstar here in Edinburgh, and he's been there since DMA. Since they were the original companies that shipped lemons.
Wow, yeah.
Way back, and he's just actually working or collabing with the guys on the new Red Dead. But he's been in Edinburgh, you know, forever, and he said, I've been happy, I love what I do. He's been offered higher positions. He's been like, no, I want to stay where I am. I love making the art. So, I think there is two schools of mind in it. There is guys who are like, no, I want to keep chasing that next challenge, and some guys who are like, I'm happy where I am. So yeah,
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's not like I'm not. I think I just find my challenges elsewhere.
yeah,
Challenges. I like to find my challenges. Sorry,
uh
within my own like creative art field.
yeah, yeah. I
To
think
figure out my own stuff.
Yeah, I think in art, especially this industry, artists in film or games, I think, there is a thing that if you want to stay where you are and work, people I think me even coming from a culture where I used to be in an office where guys were chasing and stepping over each other for jobs, and again it was a paycheck they were chasing. You were kind of looked down on if you didn't chase that next opportunity, or people were like, what's wrong with you? You don't want to do X, Y, or Z job or be a manager. Whereas in this industry we're in now, again, me being very young and new to it, I've found that guys are, you want to stay in the art and just be part of the art team, that's great.
Mhm.
Find your niche, find your wheelhouse, and go for it. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, yeah, yeah, exactly. It's just finding that balance, where you're being challenged, but still,
yeah,
doing what you actually enjoy. I mean,
yeah. I mean, if Eve was the guys at CCP were still pushing that button of challenging you, then of course you're going to be happy to stay there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It was a wonderful place. I
yeah,
mean, I was there for 12 years and
yeah.
I loved it.
Well, and that's again for even now. I think people will see that as a long time in a studio because like I said, most guys try to jump between. But yeah, it's rare now. I think guys stay with studios so long. But I mean, sometimes it's out of their control. Sometimes places get shut down or projects get cancelled, and they have to move. But I think Eve's been. I wouldn't say they're lucky. They've worked really hard to get where they are, and they've done really well. To still be where they are. And yeah, it's great that they've been able to employ you guys for so long and keep you as part of one team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, still of the some of the old people, they're still there.
Yep, yep, and with the new blood, so it's great. Yeah, definitely. And then you know, you said you were there. If people don't know, obviously, because this was quite recent. Was it even last year? You left the
Yeah.
studio.
So I left the studio. It's almost a year now, actually. I left the studio and I went to another small company called Solfar, which is a VR lab company,
Right.
or a VR company. But it's the same founder that founded CCP.
Oh,
So I'm
right.
working
So you
with
went with him.
yeah. So I'm working with Rainer again,
Oh,
and
that's great. Yeah.
actually a lot of people from CCP are there, like
Oh,
some of
wow.
the old guys.
Yeah. And then what was the draw for going there? Was it just the people you were kind of thinking it would be great to go with, or was the project interesting to you?
It's a bit of both. I mean, I knew all these people, and I knew we worked all well together, and it was going to be, I just, and also just a new, fresh project was
Right.
very exciting as well.
Yeah, interesting. And again, the guy, who was the founder back, who launched Eve, who was with TCP, he'll be the same mind. I'd imagine he would be thinking, I've done this thing, it's been great, but I want to seek that new challenge now. So he's obviously
Yeah,
moving
exactly.
forward. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and CCP just changed a lot in so many years, in all these years. I think when I joined in 2004, we
Yep.
were like 30 or something.
Yep.
And then at some point we were 600.
Wow.
So, I mean, the company just changed a lot.
It's a big team. Yeah. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's probably comparable to the guys in Edinburgh Rockstar. They're the same. They're about nearly 600 people. Between admin staff and that, I think they employ about 350 artists, but between 3D and 2D. Although I know they only have about 12, maybe 11 2D guys,
Mhm.
kind of in full time pay. But yeah, it's interesting when the company evolves so quickly, and you've been there since the ground in. It's interesting to see that change going through.
Yeah, because I mean, what happens is you start to get a lot of middle managers, and everything starts getting harder. And it's not that you can't. I when I'm working, and especially on games, I like to have a very quick iterative process.
Yep.
I just want to be able to do the thing and put it straight in, and
Yeah.
just like, and I almost want to do it from A to Z.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The whole thing, and also, actually, a large part of the draw to Solfars as well is they're using Unreal
Yeah.
Engine,
Right.
and I mean that is just such a beautiful engine. It's just
Yeah.
it's absolutely ridiculous using it. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't program. I used to try to be a programmer because
Yeah.
both my mom and dad are programmers,
Yep.
so I sort of dabbled a little bit with it,
Uh-huh.
but I just can't because I don't know. There's something about text on a screen that just kills me inside. But I can totally like work with nodes and set
Yeah.
up blueprints and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So my logical brain is fine. It's
Yeah.
just like something with my eyes and text that just kills it.
Yeah, and I've been lucky just recently with our project university coming up to our kind of last year's. I'm doing a sci-fi environment in 3D, and I'm using Unreal hopefully to render it, to use it in real time. So it has been interesting working with it. Definitely seen all the powerful tools that are just
it's just absolutely amazing. Just
Oh
the
yeah,
shaders, using building up shaders in it.
yeah.
It's just so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a kind of point and click mentality. Like I just, there's so much you can do just by dragging and dropping. It's, there's
Absolutely.
very little, kind of logic in it sometimes. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, even walking through, you've jumped a while because you've had such a huge elaborate career at CCP. Um, what was your kind of your 9 to 5 walking through the door like? What would your day mostly consist of once you got in and had your morning coffee?
Um, well, I think every day was very different because I was a little bit in between the cracks
Right.
at CCP.
Yep.
I had been there for a really long time,
Mhm.
so I was jumping a lot between projects.
Right.
I mean, for example, I worked on Eve, and then I worked also on Dust in Shanghai, and then I also worked on World of Darkness for a few years.
Right.
So I was like switching between a lot,
Yep.
and I was often just in this. I always saw myself sort of in a bit of a support role for other visual artists,
Right.
both the cinema team and the concert artists. And but then I took some pet projects as well. For example, I built all the lens flares in Eve from scratch with
All right.
another programmer,
Nice.
and we just like decided to like, hey, let's make them kick ass, and just like we built our own system around it, and just
Yeah.
and I set it all up, and that was like a month or two of just doing something really pretty and satisfying. And
Yeah. And I take it I mean, hour-wise, I mean, whatever you would feel day to day, but was the majority of your day spent painting, or was it mostly liaison with different people in the group?
yeah, a bit of both. I mean, often I got like week stretches of just painting,
Right.
and then next week I would maybe be more caught up in meetings and decision making
Right. Yep.
and things like that.
Yeah.
So
And,
there's like I didn't have any ritual like something.
yeah, it was different
At
from day.
8:45 I go get my coffee, and then I sit down with this guy, and
Yeah. It was just where the kind of wind took you at the time. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like a total flux mentality. Just see
Yeah.
what happens.
And then from day to day, I mean, how was your kind of your hour based? I mean, just for example, I mean, we've got a team, or guys I know here that are based in Stirling in Scotland, and they make train simulator, Dovetail, and they guys are very lucky. They're 8 till 4 every day. They don't do weekends and they don't do overtime mostly. So, and then you've got the guys on the reflex side where there's guys like in EA with sleeping bags under their desks. I mean,
Yeah.
was that a kind of happy medium for you, or was it one or the
Uh,
other?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, at CCP, I mean, in the early days, when we were still struggling a lot, of course, we did do some overtime, and especially before release.
Yep.
Before the releases, I mean, we did,
Mhm.
but nobody was ever forced to do overtime. It was more just like, all right, let's do this shit, and
Yeah.
we did it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't think I ever saw overtime at CCP for the last like 5, 6, 7 years.
Oh wow.
Unless when I was in like trips to Shanghai or Atlanta, then of course you're just working 18 hours and you go to sleep and then you wake
Yeah.
up.
Get back up and work again. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
But again, it's one of these things. It's where, again, it's a rare industry we're in where most guys who are here, in fact, probably everybody who's here, loves their job and wants to be here. So asking somebody to work extra time then is something that even though you'll have to ask it sometimes, you like you said, you just be motivated to make the best game you can make. So everybody gets behind it.
yeah, and I mean it's fine. I think it's totally fine to do it in bursts, but
Yeah.
you have to be so careful with it because it's so soul draining.
Yeah.
And the problem is, as soon as you start getting tired, you start to work very not so smart. You start getting dumb, and
Yeah.
you start making mistakes. And I just know myself very well that if I'm working on something and I start doing mistakes,
Yeah.
it's just time consuming. It's just
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to go back in later and fix it.
Yeah. You're just kind of burning the wasted stuff at the end that you're just kind of
Yeah, I'd rather stand up and seek inspiration from the coffee machine or something, or
Yeah.
anything else. It doesn't matter. Just like, or just have a walk, or like
Yeah.
play a bit of Portal, or it doesn't matter. It's just like
Yeah. Because sometimes even I've come at myself when you're painting something and you just get to that point where you're like, what what the fuck can I do with this painting now? Like, my brain is, what am I doing? You've been there for 2 3 hours, you've rendered, and then you're like, where is the next step? I just kind of see it. So I've done it. I went out and walked down the street, or I've just sat on my couch for 5 minutes and read something, and then it just comes to you. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, my favorite way of painting is like starting something and then just throwing it into my unfinished folder and then looking at it again in like 2 3 months and just see something completely different out of it and continue and then throw it again into the like unfinished
yeah,
and come back to it. And just like, so I often have, as with my personal projects, I often have like, I don't know, my unfinished folder is just packed with ugly pictures that I sometimes come back to and just finish up. And
Yeah.
just like, because then I see, okay, because there was something there, and now I see how I can like draw that forward or fix it or make it more interesting.
yeah. When you come back to something with like a kind of fresh pair of eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's so easy to get tunnel vision and get emotional about the thing you're working on.
Yep, definitely. And then again, it's one of these things that I think we're very lucky just now in this kind of day and age, is that with the internet and Facebook exploding so much and stuff, like obviously ArtStation has been around for a bit, but it being so big now, there's so much feedback, there's so much stuff that people can come back with you. You can post something on Facebook and in 5 minutes 10 people can tell you what's wrong or right with it, which I think is great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then
absolutely, I think that's a good thing. But
yeah.
Sorry, no, continue.
No, that's fine. No, but I think you kind of covered this and stuff when you talked about, your talk was about painting principles, and you were talking about, some things that are great to see at these at industry events, because again, it's something like, even when you talked about contrasting paintings, going back, thinking about it, it seems such an obvious thing, but you point out in a lot of your paintings and using a lot of examples, it's having this feedback now in this day and age is great, and these events, these stuff like ArtStation, stuff like industry workshops, and then again you talked a lot about your personal stuff and things you painted, even the market scene, I think you highlighted, that you came back to a couple of times, and that was a kind of thing where you did start that, and it was something, and it changed into something different. I can remember vaguely. You cropped it. I think you changed the.
Yeah, I cropped it a lot. Yeah, because I remember when I was working on that image, there was just this one part that I really liked.
Yep.
And I ended up just like cropping it, like really aggressively, and just zooming in on something and just rendering that out.
Retraining the focus, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a very common thing to do, but I just loved it, because it's like, it was a totally different thing.
Yeah, and again, you've spoke at length about this in other talks and stuff like that, but just for our audience, I mean, what is your view on personal or kind of passion projects? I mean, we all know, I think, at this point, that it's great to have something outside of work you focus on, but what is your kind of professional take on it? How do you feel about this stuff?
Just about personal work.
The kind of power of having something that is away from work, that is away from your day to day.
Yeah, I mean, the older I get, the more important I think it is to be to find like the artist inside you.
Yep.
And not be a whore.
Yeah.
Because I mean, being a worker, and I'm not saying, I mean, of course, you can totally do art. Yeah, I mean, games and movies are art.
Yep.
But it's not. I mean, for me personally, it's not. I mean, maybe I'm just very egotistic. I just like to find the artist within me.
Yeah.
And I whether I'm doing it or not. And I don't mean that either as a sort of egotistic artist kind of thing. It's just I'm sort of just slowly discovering that that's more what life is about.
Yeah, definitely taking that kind of time, to find yourself.
Yeah, exactly, and just like explore that, and because the industry, company, and I have been like super lucky in a company. I mean, worked with one of the best companies, in my opinion. I mean, because they were like really cared for the workers, and there was people there were amazing,
Yep.
and I learned so much from them.
Yep.
But in the end, it's just a job.
Yeah.
And
You
I don't know. I know it sounds bleak.
No. I mean, definitely. I mean, you and I both know even like Titus, and Titus is the same, where he's tried to walk away from some of the bigger studios and find his art outside of that job and something that defines him as an artist. That's more personal to him. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I always see myself in, like, I don't know, when I'm an old man, I'll be living on an island somewhere and I'll just be doing oil paintings.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean,
I promise you it's not going to happen, but that's what I see myself.
Yeah, it's as soon as you get away from the frozen tundra that is Iceland. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same in Scotland, buddy. I mean, we've got it here as well. It's the winter has definitely hit here, and we were -4, I think, the other night, and yeah, you've got to be a hardy people to live where we live. So
Yeah, I would definitely move south.
yeah. So I mean, obviously you've had this illustrious career, and you've worked with CCP. You've moved on to this new project, and you've done a lot of talks. You've done a lot of stuff, giving back. I mean, in general, as the kind of question we ask most people, and most answers are the same, but now and again you get a bit different. I always wondered, what is your take on guys coming into the industry, like myself or other people? What do you think is the kind of the most important things to aim for when trying to find work or practicing, or just a kind of general thing about starting in the industry?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, of course, it's a bit tough to say.
Yeah, because there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but I could just be brutally honest. When I look at portfolios and when I'm looking at people I want to hire,
Yep.
at like uniqueness, what can this person give me?
Yep.
As opposed to all the other that are seeking work.
Yeah.
And it comes just down to not style, but more like to the character. I mean, what's the interests? What's the what can he or she give me that we don't have?
Yeah.
Because it's not that hard to find people who can just like work.
Yeah.
But it's really fucking hard to find people with a good eye.
Yeah.
And who like know when to take the right decisions and are smart and clever.
Yeah.
So I mean, I personally value that more from workers, and I'm not saying like everybody needs to like do that, but
yeah.
That's what I'm looking for when I'm looking for creative people, and of course that they're diligent and hard workers, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's going to be proven when they're hired.
Yeah.
You can't see that before.
Yeah, before they come into the job. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, you're talking about uniqueness. Are you talking about kind of stylistic or?
Yeah, just it can be style. It can also be just a way of thinking.
Right. Maybe how they approach compositions or paintings.
Yeah, exactly. How do they do storytelling differently?
Right.
How is the cinematography like talking to you? How is it?
Because story is such a big a part of now of concept art.
Yeah, exactly, and also just the design aspects. I mean,
Yeah.
I can mention like one guy we hired. I think it was like 2 years ago at CCP. His name is Pavel Shushuk.
Mm-hmm.
A fantastic guy, super nice, and he just taught us like to approach everything very differently. And he takes the form follows function mentality really to heart.
Wow. Yeah.
And he goes the full like crazy way into exploring like sci-fi concepts. Right. I mean, for example, he was designing a ship and he started like thinking, oh, okay, yeah, so with heat dissipation, that's a real issue in space because heat, it's very hard to what's it called, the thermal it's basically, yeah, because it's very hard to cool spaceships down.
Right.
Down.
Yep.
because there's no air around to siphon the heat.
You can't vent it, yeah.
Exactly. There's no way to vent the heat. So he started researching into just cipher concepts, into how it's done, and coming up with his own ideas, and then implementing them into his designs.
Wow.
And that's just crazy cool. You know, it's like suddenly you have these like ports on the sides that are ejecting some sort of a radioactive chemical, just to dissipate the heat, and it just like it becomes so real.
Yep.
Because suddenly there's a function to it.
Yeah. And again, it's just the extra level of detail. I mean, I think I've talked about this example numerous times, but there was a time where I was watching The Last of Us making of from the guys at Naughty Dog, and one guy was doing a painting, and it was a snow scene, and he was painting these parts of the trees at the bottom of the trees. He was painting it as normal ground, where the snow had melted, and he was like, because if you study trees and the kind of biology or makeup of trees, they generate most of their heat at the root, at the base of the trees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So that's where there would be a clearing of snow. But that's the level of thinking, painting wise. Most guys might just paint trees in the snow. I mean, but
absolutely.
That guy's taking it to the next level and thinking, well, this is actually making it so much more realistic. So it's that's like, I know what you mean. That's the thing you're looking for in people, is to take paintings to that next level that makes it even more believable.
Yeah, exactly. They just have that sort of thought, and they can actually like look around and sort of come to conclusions of why it is that way. I mean, it's a little bit like being like a scientist in many ways, or an engineer, and you're just like deconstructing
everything.
The visual world around you, and just the world, and just learning about it. And the more you know, the more believable your paintings are going to be.
I mean, even when I talked to Jort back when we interviewed him, he was talking, obviously working at Star Citizen, and he was saying that one thing that's helped him a lot is this kind of, I think he called it awareness, or kind of like the I'm trying to think of the word, where he was more conscious of the world, as he walked around it. He was basically thinking, as he walked around, he was paying attention more to like the trees and the grass and how things were shaped, and
he was maybe using mindfulness.
That was it. That's exactly what it was. It was mindfulness. Yeah, definitely.
And totally. I started doing mindfulness a long time ago, and it's really helps.
So I mean, what is, in the sense of you saying you started doing it? I mean, is that just? I mean, I'm trying to break it down to layman's form here, because obviously it's a very alien thing to me, but is this just being more mindful of your surroundings, or just taking an interest in what is actually making up where you're walking, or?
It's basically just one form of meditation, really. I mean, you can meditate. It's just a way to turn off your thoughts and open your eyes.
Yep.
And it's just something you train, and it's when you sort of click into it, it's very satisfying. I mean, you can almost compare it to, for example, when you go abroad, all you're doing is like you're walking through a new city, and you're looking all around, and you're just like noticing this and that, and and you're like looking at everything, and you're admiring the architecture and looking up at the stories, above you and everything. But all the locals, they just have their like tunnel vision. They're just like,
because they see it every day.
Yeah, they see it every day, so they don't think about it. They're thinking about what to have for dinner, or what to feed their dog, or whatever. And it's just breaking that thought, basically. Just stop thinking and just like try to look around and experience it anew.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for me even now. Recently, I'm trying to not engage with my phone in the morning and try and ignore that as much as I can. Read a lot more before bed instead of, again, I think coming from a society years ago when I used to work in an engineering job with guys who had done the same job for 40 years, and I was coming off as an apprentice, you're introduced to a lot of bad habits, and I think that is a real problem going forward as social media addiction. I really think it is a real thing. Where,
absolutely.
Yeah, and you talk about the high again. It's the high of posting things online, getting that, waiting for that like to come back and the comments. And yeah, I think it is a serious problem. That it's great to be able to just switch off and absorb nature as you walk through it.
Because that's where real satisfaction comes from.
Yeah, I mean, the best antidepressant in the world is to go a walk, and
absolutely.
Yeah, and I just like. Sorry. No, I was just saying, as an artist, again, when you go off, you know, you're plein air stuff, or you're out taking, you know, acrylics to go paint, or, you know, the whole sense of painting in the wild is to take in as much of the world around you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, and it can't hurt to do it, at least.
yeah, definitely. I mean, again, it's one of these things that I try to teach people, is that I find now a lot of guys who are younger than me who are trying to get into the industry is that they're glued to ArtStation a lot of the times, or when they do studies now, they study paintings of guys who are in the industry now, whereas they don't look back to the masters, they don't look back to just taking things in from nature. I mean, I remember Ian McCaig, the Star Wars artist. I mean, I was watching a talk with him, and he talked about how he opened a couple of books to try to learn how to draw grass, and then he just looked out the back garden, and he was like, "Oh, there's a million blades of grass on my garden floor." He said he lay on his stomach and just drew it from one to one, and closed all his books. And he says that's really how people should be taking in art and how they should be drawn from his life.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing master studies and
Yep.
looking at other people's, artwork and
Definitely,
admiring
yeah.
them
Yeah.
and hating them. But the problem is you shouldn't be comparing yourself to them.
Oh yeah.
Because it's just so disheartening and bad.
Yeah.
And the thing is also, while you're painting,
Yeah.
y- it's only in the last like 5% of a painting that it starts to click together. At least for me.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
it looks like an ugly bitch until like the last like 3-4%, and that's just the way how I build them up.
Yeah.
And if I have something finished that I'm looking at on the side, it's just gonna kill me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm looking at a finished house and comparing it's like building a house. I have this finished house beside me, and while I'm still trying to build this one, and I'm wondering why doesn't it look the same?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it's still just it's still forming.
But it's your version of the house, and people don't understand that it has to be your version and not a copy of somebody else's version.
Yeah. Also that. I mean, also that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think that's great for me. Anyway, Borkur, I'll let you go and get back to your work because I know you're busy. But thank you so much.
Hey, anytime. It was really nice.
It was great. If people are looking for your work or want to check out anything you guys are doing in your studio, where can they find you?
Do you mean my personal work or or what I'm doing at work?
Oh well, both obviously, because obviously they want to see your work, but I'm assuming the guys at the studio will probably want to promote, whatever they're working on as well.
Yeah, I mean it's Soulfire Studios, and we're working on a secret project at the moment, so I can't really say anything about that.
Awesome.
Which is surprisingly fun, actually.
Yeah.
But never mind, I can't talk about that. But my personal work is just on borkurart.com, and I'm on ArtStation as well, and Facebook, and I mean, just add me on Facebook.
Awesome.
I usually just accept all artists on Facebook and nobody else.
Yeah.
And if you ever post a photograph of what you're eating, I will block you.
Yeah, the Instagram wannabes better get out of there, man. Yeah, so no more coffee selfies and stuff. Yeah. Great. Well, again, thanks very much, Bokur, and
Thank you.
yeah, and hope to hear you guys back in the next couple of weeks. We'll be back with Colin and next week's episode, and speak to you all later. Bye.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.